Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about ear infections. Now I think this is a fitting episode because I've treated multiple ear infections so far this fall. I've treated multiple ear infections over the past decade, but always there seems to be this influx of ear infection patients who come into my practice at this time of year. So I want to teach you today how to address ear infections with homeopathic medicine. And because when the seasons change, especially from, super hot to cooler fall temperatures, more potentially more wind, more cool air coming in into the body than there has been in several months, the body can respond in a way that brings on a cold, that brings on a flu, that brings on a fever, sore throat, or an ear infection. And this, of course, ear infections or otitis media, it's, the fancy medical term, but, most parents freak out when their kids are burdened with these ailments, including ear infections. And of course, we don't want our kids to suffer or to be in pain. However, I'm going to make some suggestions here as to how you can go about approaching the ear infection in a more non-invasive, non-suppressive way, so you can support your child's development, your child's immune system, your child's health, and help to fight the infection without hopefully using suppressive therapies. So, of course, this condition affects mostly children, but it can affect adults. The reason why it affects children more so than adults is because most children, I say most, they have been exposed to less suppressive therapies than us adults have, meaning they've had less antibiotics, they've had less suppressive therapies come into their body. Now, that's of course changing today because the vaccine schedule is, and there I just blew it with YouTube. I meant to code that word, but the schedule for the what's are ever increasing, 72 plus today. So the child may not get an ear infection over the course of its life. And if that's the case is because the child is too suppressed. So we need to also understand that if your child gets an ear infection, a cold, a flu, a fever, a sore throat, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's actually a positive thing. It is a sign that the immune system isn't completely suppressed. And it's not completely suppressed because it can get an acute, it can produce acute symptoms and fight back and can fight the infection. And when somebody's more in a chronic disease state, they get less acutes, less fevers, less sore throats, less ear infections, because their immune system has been so suppressed with antibiotics, with the you-know-whats, with any type of, OTC or RX medication. So adults tend to get less acutes and less ear infections than kids. Also, here's the thing, it's really important, but ear infections are relatively benign. Yeah, they're a pain in the ass, and they're painful. The kid can scream. There can be a lot of pain and discomfort and so forth. But if we compare an ear infection with something like strep throat, the ear infection is more so on the surface of the body. Strep throat is deeper into the body. If we keep suppressing the body, if we keep suppressing the immune system, everybody's like, oh, we have an innate immune system. It can fight back, it defend itself. It's like, yeah, it can, if we put it in the right environment. If we discontinue suppressing our immune system, it can fight back. The thing is, most people have an immune system that's so compromised, it's unable to fight back. So this is really important because we need to understand that the importance of acutes, the importance of things like an ear infection, because the more you suppress, anyone, child, adult, etc., the deeper the pathology goes in the body. So you start with an ear infection, let's say you take antibiotics for that, then it'll go into the throat, they'll start to get strep throat infections, that's deeper down into the body. Then, let's say you suppress that, like I did when I was a kid. I was given antibiotics whenever I had strep throat. So then what happens is, months to years later, what happens is you'll get bronchitis, and then you take antibiotics, and then you suppress that, and then what the pathology goes deeper and deeper and deeper into the body the more you suppress. Eventually you'll stop getting acutes, and you'll just have chronic disease states, chronic pain, constipation, IBS, depression, anxiety, etc., right? So we need to really start thinking about acutes and acute illness, cold, flu, fever, sore throat, ear infection, etc., in a different mindset. We've been programmed to think about acute conditions, and chronic for that matter, in unhelpful ways, in unproductive ways, in ways that are actually harmful to our health, to our longevity, to our children's health and longevity, in ways that fuel chronic disease. Talk about that, more later and throughout this episode. And in ways that don't actually help to eliminate the pathogens from the body, but simply like they're like, whenever you take an antibiotic, you're like, oh my gosh, my earache went away, my children, he's feeling so much better. It's like, that approach is like if you have a broom and you're just sweeping the shit, just sweeping it, just sweep it under the carpet. There you go, boom, it's not there anymore. You pick up that carpet, there's mold, there's black mold, there's dust, there's all this pile of crap, right? That's what happens when you take antibiotics. Okay, so I'm not saying that, I'm not giving you medical advice. This isn't meant to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease, right? I have to say that BS and nonsense, but there are some situations where, okay, antibiotics are necessary. We have to call upon them in certain situations, but the amount that we need to call on them is very little, right? We overdo it in this way. So what happens is when we suppress these acute conditions, that this dirt and clutter, these AKA pathogens that we've swept under the carpet, that we've just like put a blanket on, they will resurface again in the same way. The ear infection will come back. Oh, and eventually the more we suppress, they'll come out in a different way, in a way where the pathology has pushed itself deeper into the body, causing more serious acutes, bronchitis, pneumonia, that's a more serious acute than an ear infection. It's more serious. What I mean by that is it's more life-threatening than an ear infection, than strep throat, right? So this is what happens every single time when we treat our acute conditions with suppressive therapies. And you get to a point where there's a tipping point, the genetic predisposition is activated even more, boom, and then it's like, you're rolling this ball down the hill, and then you get this deeper pathology starts to manifest. Of course, as I mentioned, not that suppressives aren't necessary from time to time, but the key word is time to time, and should really be, the word really should be not from time to time, but should be hardly ever, should be rarely, it should be almost never. Yet when we have been brainwashed by big pharma and our government to think in the opposite way, that's how you're going to think. That's how you're going to approach the acute thing. Oh yeah, ear infection, urgent care, antibiotic, boom, boom, boom. That's how we're thinking. Boom, boom. It's like a robot. Boom, boom, boom. That's how we think. If you have a sniffle or the tiniest cough, or just a pinch of a sore throat, or maybe a little tickle in your throat, quick, take an antibiotic and take an OTC, over the counter medication. This is what most people do. It's what most parents do. Yet this approach to sickness and to our acutes this is what lays a solid foundation for more serious acutes down the line. And eventually the acutes will diminish and stop, and a chronic disease will set in. Right? The thing is, most people have no idea that there's another alternative, an alternative that actually works, that's effective, that brings rapid changes to an acute condition, that not only removes pathogens from the body, but strengthens the life force, the vitality, one's longevity, the immune system. Of course, that medicine is homeopathy. So it's my goal with this episode that You gain new insight when it comes to acute conditions and treating these conditions in non-invasive yet effective ways. God, I'm so passionate about this because I wish that my parents knew this. I wish that this was more widely known, because we would have a much healthier society overall if we use less pharmaceutical medicine. And so today, I'm particularly going to talk about and focus on how to use homeopathy to treat otitis media, right? That's MD lingo for ear infections. I'm going to teach you how to do it using homeopathy. So now I talk about this in my foundations course, as well as how to approach other acute conditions. However, in light of all the ear infection cases I've had this month, it's literally been, I'm like checking my emails, like there's going to be at least one ear infection case there. Well, there it is. Yes. Okay. So I want to share this insight with you all today. You know, if you're a parent, especially, this may be, my goal is that it's helpful for you if your child does get an acute ear infection this fall or winter. So I'm going to talk, I'll continue to talk about and mention the importance of acutes throughout this episode, the importance of high fever, the importance of why these conditions are actually beneficial to your kids, to you as adults too. Hey, if you can crank out, if you can rock a high fever and you're over the age of 20, that's a good sign. That's a really good sign that your immune system isn't super suppressed. It's able to elicit a healing response. That's the best detox ever. And I know the question is going to be, and this is always the question that I get, hey, can I just go into a sauna and raise my body temperature and have a similar effect on my immune system? The answer is no. And the answer is no. I did a whole podcast episode on this. I think a few months ago or so, probably, sometime this year, I suspect. And the answer is no, because your body is temperature, your body's temperature is on increasing because of the heat. Okay. In order to have this immune stimulating effect that fever elicits, and the fever has to be at least 101.3 or higher Fahrenheit, in order for this, immune system effect to kick in, it has to be fighting off a pathogen. It has to be strong enough to say, there's a pathogen, boom. That has to be the stimulus. That has to be the impetus. That has to be the trigger. You cannot go into a sauna or sweat this or that, or whatever it may be. You cannot just raise your body temperature and say, hey, I'm stimulating my immune system. You may be stimulating it in a certain way, but not in the sense where it's going to be able to improve one's level of health or overcome an acute or chronic condition just from being from raising your body temperature. Your immune system has to be strong enough so that when a pathogen comes in, it can elicit the fever. Now, most people's immune systems are so consumed with with trying to overcome a chronic condition that even if some sort of streptococcus or staph or whatnot enters the body, it's not even the immune system isn't even capable of registering that, of combating that. It won't even cause major, any health issues really, because the body is too consumed with the chronic. The immune system literally can't fight back because it's like a whole ton of bricks sitting on the immune system, weighing it down. So the whole goal is that we use less suppressives and we're able to get high fever. And if we've already fucked that whole thing by taking too many suppressives and we can no longer get high fever, then we use things like homeopathy to help bring your body, to help move your organism into a stronger place. So, now, okay, before I get into ear infections and how I approach them using homeopathy, I have a few updates, and I want to start with a farm update. And that is all about our pigs, because some of you have been asking, how are the pigs doing? I haven't seen videos of them in a while. You haven't seen videos of them in a while because they're massive. So, you know, if I get some time, I'll go down and take a video of them. But our pigs are currently weighing in at about 200, 215 pounds, and they're getting big. And the nights here in the high altitude desert are dropping into the 40s, which means that our pigs are gaining a nice slab of lard around their organs and innards and so forth. And I know that may sound savage, but it is sacrilege to butcher your pigs before they've been exposed to plenty of cold nights and cool days to allow their lard layer, their fat layer, to build. This is a survival tactic for them that allows them, their body's like, hey, kick in this lard layer, kick in this fat layer, which is basically just this is fat layers chock full of vitamin D. So they also, like we do, they pull on their vitamin D stores, store it here in as lard around their organs and skin and so forth. This is a survival tactic that allows them to survive the cold winters and prepares them for that. You know, biology is so smart when we actually let it do its thing. So that's a pig update. I'm going to keep you posted on the pigs and their lard as we get into the heart of fall. I suspect we'll start butchering them this November, and they're doing great, and they're very close to their due date. So that's the pigs. The next thing I want to announce, I haven't put it out there yet. Now I am. This is for you all. And my passion, of course. You all have been asking me for years to write a cookbook. So here we are, seize the day. I'm in the process of doing this and want to let you all know that I've started a blog to begin sharing my recipes, food stories, farm adventures, and cooking heritage with you all. Okay, this is me prepping to write the cookbook, and also gives you a nice resource so you can get some of those recipes and food tips before the book actually comes out. You can check out the blog. So far I have one post up, and I will be writing regularly there. But you can go to my site, heatharshepard.com, and on the menu tab, you can click on the blog heading, and there you go. Read away. I hope you love it. Last, but certainly not least, my homemade chocolate bars are back. And I'd say, personally, they're better than ever. And they're available for purchase on our farm site, ojoconejo.com, OJOCONEJO.com. We're shipping those out once a week now. And we're using chocolate from my farmer friend in Mexico, Horacio. He is a cacao farmer that I met during my travels in Mexico. And we figured out a way for him to ship his beans, his whole cacao beans, to me. And they're 100% organic and roasted. And so I take those beans and turn it into chocolate bars. And I have added a nice decadent caramel topping to the bars as well, with almonds and sea salt. So if you want to taste our bars, I would love for you to, and you're not local and you can't just hop over to the farm and say, hey, I'll take 3 bars. Go to our farm site, ojoconejo.com, visit the farm store. You can read more about the bars and purchase if your heart desires. All right, let's talk ear infections and homeopathy. Honestly, homeopathy works wonders for ear infections. Let's be real, it works wonders for many conditions as long as you have chosen the correct remedy and potency and repetition of that remedy. That's always the trick. People take a remedy, oh, it didn't work. There is a lot to understand and know when it comes to homeopathy and how to actually use it in a way that it's just like this. You go into let's this maybe people can grasp their wrap their heads around this one. You go into a doctor, hey, take this medication. If you took too much of the medication, what happens is it's not going to go well. If you took too little of the medication, it's not going to go well. If you take just the right dose, it's going to go really well. Now, of course, that was a bad example because it's never going to go really well with big pharma, but with homeopathy, you get the perfect dose, the perfect potency, and boom, literally it can be life-changing for acutes and chronics, including ear infections. So let's say your kid gets an ear infection. The knee-jerk reaction, the patellar reflex, is to drag your sick kid into the car and drive them to urgent care or to your pediatrician or to your GP to have them checked out. The last thing your kid wants to do when they're sick is go for a car ride and, go into this, horrific building to get checked out. Sometimes it's, okay, I understand if sometimes you have to do that, right? But here's the other thing. There's a lot of pressure going on when your kid gets an acute. There's pressure from the outside. There's pressure from grandma and grandpa. They're on your ass because you haven't taken them to the doctor. By then, the grandparents or maybe even the other parent who swings more to the conventional side has Googled every bad thing that can happen if an ear infection isn't treated. You've gone back and forth what to do because bad suppressives are bad. What do I do instead? And you've duked it out with your partner and are now giving each other the silent treatment because you can't agree, or grandma has pressured you and has scared you half to death, that you now too are convinced that your kid's eardrum will burst and they'll be deaf for the rest of your life. That's a typical scenario of how it goes, right? So, as my therapist says, let's slow this shit way down. Okay. Now, most people act out of panic and they act out of fear. And what happens is then we act out of stupidity. Just, it's like we get so caught up and literally most people don't know what to do in such acute situations other than antibiotics. Okay. So no one is going to die of an ear infection. And while some ear infections, particularly the silica kind, which I'll talk about this remedy here in this episode, can involve a burst eardrum. The eardrum can be healed and no one has to go deaf, however. Okay. You can also avoid this by treating the ear infection when it comes on with homeopathy. As I mentioned, homeopathy is amazing at treating ear infections. You just have to get the right remedy to your child. And then they'll often take the remedy, fall asleep, wake up, and feel little to no ear pain. If the ear pain's there, but more mild, then you repeat the remedy, right? It's not magic, it's just effective. So in order to treat your kid's ear infection, you have to know a few things. You have to know a few things about homeopathy. You can't just Google and go in. You can't just go in without an understanding of homeopathy. You can't just Google it and be like, oh, this is a remedy. It's the ear infection remedy. Here we go. So, there's a lot to know about homeopathy, but I'm going to give you a basic outline here of a few things that are helpful to know that may be very helpful if your child gets in an ear infection and you're like, okay, boom, 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 this is what I do. So, in order to treat your kid's ear infection, you have to know a few things. You have to know what symptoms your child has. It's not like we get caught up in the disease diagnosis. Oh my God, ear pain, my kid has an ear infection, boom, that's okay. Now we're total chaos, spinning out. Stay calm. You have to understand your child's specific symptoms. This pertains to every single condition, okay? But we're focusing on ear infection today. You have to understand your child's specific symptoms. Okay, the key with homeopathy is matching your child's ear pain symptoms with a remedy that produces those same symptoms. Homeopathy, unlike naturopathy, functional med, allopathic medicine, comes from a standpoint where like cures like. So having some knowledge about common otitis remedies is key. And I'm going to share a few of those remedies with you today. Also, what's key is you have to know your child's symptoms. Get specific. It's not just like, oh my God, ear pain, Google it. Whoa, ear pain. Talk to the kid. Don't fuck Google, okay? Just forget about that. Talk to your child. Which ear hurts, right or left, or both? Are you hot? Are you cold? Does your throat hurt? Was there a cold or other acute symptoms, a cold, a stomach ache, other things that came on that preceded the ear infection? Or was it just like, boom, here's the ear infection right-sided. Here's the ear infection left-sided. Okay? Understand, pay attention to your kid and ask them their symptoms. Are they thirsty? Do they want ice cold drinks? Are they thirstless? They don't want anything to drink. Your child is going to have, the ear infection isn't the only symptom. Symptoms are going to show up in many ways. Their thirst, their body temperature, their energy levels. Do they have a fever? Did something come before the ear infection, or was it just like out of nowhere, the child screaming of ear pain? Which side of the ear is hurting? Is anything else hurting? This is key. Focus on this holographic approach. All of the symptoms need to be considered, not just, oh my God, he has an earache. That is unhelpful. Okay, so talk to your kid, observe your child, get your child's symptoms. Is he or she wrapping up in blankets? Does he want all the blankets off? Do they stick their feet out of the covers? Pay attention, observe. This is how you're going to get your child the correct remedy. That's number one. Number two, you have to know what potency to give. You can't just go to your pharmacy and there's a pulsatilla, oh, get that, and it's a 6C, which we don't use 6C really in homeopathy, at least how I practice. No, that's not how we do it. We have to understand what potency to give. When treating an ear infection, 200C potency is recommended. That's what I recommend. Okay, however, as my practitioner training students are well aware, you have to be certain, you have to be pretty certain, right? You have to be pretty certain of the remedy to give a 200C. If you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to give, just 200C, boom. Don't do that. Don't do that. You know, of course, we all make mistakes. It's just a part of the learning process. It's part of the process of, you know, any profession. But the more you know the remedies, the more you understand your child's symptoms, the more you understand the remedies, the more accurate you will be in your prescribing. So the concern for giving a remedy that's not indicated isn't that something bad is going to happen or there's going to be a side effect or a toxic, you know, dangerous side effect like, you know, if you take too many supplements or Western medication and you overdose. You can't overdose with homeopathy. That's not the concern. The concern is that if you give a remedy that's not indicated, especially in higher potencies, it will confuse the symptoms. Okay, so it will make the real remedy picture muddled and unclear. This is one reason why it's never a good idea to just constantly throw remedies at a condition. Okay, the clearer one's symptoms, the easier it is to find the correct remedy, the similar remedy. That's our goal. Okay, so understand your kid's symptoms and then understand the remedies. Okay, and I'm going to teach you a few of my go-to, the most common remedies that I see being indicated for ear infection today. So you have somewhat of a basic understanding of what remedies to consider, because literally there's over 2,000 remedies in homeopathy, right? So you have to understand some of the remedies specifically that are indicated for otitis and the specific symptoms that go with what that your child is producing. Each remedy has specific symptoms. It's just not like, hey, here's the ear infection remedies, right? There are certain remedies that are more common for ear infections, just like any condition, but we have to get the whole symptom picture to get the correct remedy. It's not just like ear infection, try this. It's not that. It's more specific. It's more nuanced than that. Okay. All right. So you have to have a clear understanding of the remedies. You have to know what potency to give. If you know you're like, oh my gosh, that's mercurius, that's mercury. Okay. Boom, 200C. Great. If you don't know, if you're unsure, start with a 30C. Okay. Start with a 30C. Next, you have to know how to administer the remedy. Now, water doses are best. They act more rapidly. They have a quick effect on the immune system. Acute cases are particularly suited for water doses. I give water doses, and at this point in my practice, I give mostly water doses for acute and chronic cases. Now, they're particularly suited well for acute conditions because of how rapidly they act. Now, what does a water dose mean? All this means is that you dissolve the remedy, 4 pellets in about 4 ounces of water, stir, set aside, let it dissolve, and then, swish it around and have the child drink the water. That's how I recommend administering the remedy. Okay. Now, you have to understand the positive signs of healing. You give the remedy and you're like, is this good? Is this bad? Is this going in the right direction? You have to understand this. This is how we know how to act, how to go from there after giving the remedy. So if you give the remedy and the child is no better in an hour, the remedy was incorrect or the remedy was spoiled. The remedy can spoil if you put it by your cell phone, if you put it near heat, near sunlight, near any EMFs, the remedy can go off. This is why I like shaking the bottle before I give the remedy to make sure the pellets are activated. So, now here's another thing. If you give the remedy and the child's symptoms simply shift, like for example, they move from the left ear and you give the remedy and then the left ear's better, but now it's in the right ear. This means the remedy was incorrect. Okay, so don't repeat it. The remedy's incorrect. That might sound obvious, but don't give them another dose. If it went from right to left, that's the wrong remedy. No, we have to go back, retake the case. If you give the remedy and your child falls asleep, this is a sign that the remedy was correct. This is one of the most positive signs in homeopathy. You give the remedy and they fall asleep. The immune system, oh man, the body like that is going into some deep healing state, so much so that they fell asleep. That's a great response. If you give the remedy and your child's symptoms get slightly worse for a few minutes, 30 minutes up to, and then a big amelioration occurs, that is a sign that the remedy was also correct. You nailed it. So I wanted to give you that basic understanding there to help you develop a new, more informed and helpful foundation, especially when it comes to understanding symptoms, homeopathy, potency, and how to increase your efficacy using this medicine, especially for ear infection. So now, we have to go over some remedies. and I'm going to provide you with a few remedies that I most commonly call upon for treating ear infection in my practice. Now, you know, I'm going to preface this by saying, of course, there are other remedies to consider for treating otitis, but these are the main remedies that are commonly needed in such cases. Okay, these are the remedies that I find are most often needed to treat this condition. I go over this. I go over several remedies in my foundations course when it comes to otitis and other acute infections. And I will, this is something I'll also be covering at the in-person intensive at my farm this October 6th through 8th. So, let's talk about some remedies. Now, one of the most notorious left-sided ear infection remedies is camellia. Again, we have to look at the whole picture. Holographic approach. The child must have, this must is in cap locks, bold, 27 font, right? The child must have ear pain on the left side. That's camellia. That's a must for camellia to be indicated. The child must have ear pain on the left side, and typically the ear pain makes them angry, makes them irritable. They ask for food or toys, you give it to them, and they're like, yeah, they throw it away, they refuse it. They ask for, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, hold me, and then they don't want it, then you go and pick them up, they don't want you to pick them up. They're capricious. They demand to be carried. And they're angry, they're irritable. You cannot pacify these kids. Sometimes, I don't see this in every single camellia case, but their stool can look like chopped up spinach, or it can smell like rotten eggs. So look for these signs. One cheek can be red, the other cheek can be pale in camellia as well during an acute ear infection. That's the typical camellia picture. You cannot just take, ear pain, like we're trained in naturopathy, in allopathy. Ear pain, this is what you do. Get specific. Get specific on the physical level. What are the physical symptoms? What are the mental, emotional symptoms? That is how we get the child, the individual, their correct remedy that will, quote unquote, cure the case. Let's talk about another hallmark remedy, pulsatilla. I use pulsatilla so often for ear infections. Now, pulsatilla often starts with some other minor complaint, minor acute complaint, a cold, a stomach ache, feeling off, maybe for a day, or two before the ear infection comes on. A day or two before then, they have a cold, they have a stomach ache, they're complaining, they don't feel well. And then day 2, day 3, here's a throbbing ear infection. The ear infection of pulsatilla is also often on the left side. So you have to differentiate between camellia and pulsatilla. Now, the ear infection for pulsatilla can be on the right. So if it's on the right, don't just say, no, this isn't pulsatilla. You can say, if it's on the right, you can say, no, this isn't camellia. That's highly unlikely. But pulsatilla, usually left, but can also be right. Okay, so don't let side deter you from this remedy. Now, the child is whiny. They're whiny, I don't feel good. They whine, they weep, they complain, they cry with the least provocation, and they can be clingy. Pulsatilla is a clingy remedy. Hold me, carry me. They'll get into bed with mom and dad at night. In the middle of the night, they'll go in the bed. Their ear pain often comes on suddenly, maybe out of nowhere, and then it goes away. And then you're like, oh, they're fine. they don't feel well, but they don't have the ear, and then a ear comes again. So the symptoms can be changeable in pulsatilla. The ear pain comes and goes and comes and goes. It has this cyclical, periodic nature to it. This is the classic pulsatilla ear infection case scenario. Okay, another remedy to consider in otitis is Mercurius vivis or solubilis. Either one, they're the same remedy, just prepared a little bit differently. Either one of those remedies is mercury. This is the remedy I'm talking about right now. This remedy is needed when there's an ear infection and the child there's a weakness. They don't have a lot of strength. Their breath is horrible. They might, if they have a stool, they're going to be fatigued after they're going to be more weak, more fatigued after they have a stool. The child is also going to have a lot of spit or drool. This is one confirming sign for this remedy. When the child wakes from sleep, there's drool on the pillow. This points to mercury. That's a symptom. Western medicine has trained us to think that, oh, that's not a big deal. They drool on the remedy. Well, who cares? It's because they mouth breathe. Nope. No, not the case. When there's drool on the pillow, yeah, sure, they might be a mouth breather, but not everybody who's a mouth breather drools on the pillow. Everybody who drools on their pillow has a mercury layer that needs to be addressed. And in the case of otitis media, and your kid drools on the pillow and or has a lot of saliva during the day, has bad breath, they're weak, and they can't be, they go between hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, right? They can't get comfortable. They're aggravated by heat. They're aggravated by cold. Pulsatilla aggravated by heat. They're going to stick their feet out of the covers. Pulsatilla is also thirstless. So if you have a kid and he's like, yeah, you're observing them. You're like, honey, you haven't drank all day. Here, drink this. Don't make them drink it. They don't want to drink it unless they have a high fever. But pulsatilla usually isn't going to have super high fever. So that's a symptom. The body's also producing a symptom. I hate when people are like, drink this much water a day. Your body's going to tell you how much water it needs per day and at what time and how much, a sip, a chug, cold, hot, room temp. Don't let the ND, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda BS fucking, oh, I can only drink room temperature water from Veda. Okay, no, you have to listen to your body. Oh my gosh, this is such a sidetrack, but I need to bring this in because about a month ago we had a friend come over to the property, helped us out with some stuff on our property. I know this is a side note, but it's like this is just will tie in why I'm saying, I'm not making fun of Ayurvedic medicine, but it's like how we practice modern day and the rigidity and dogma and stuff of these sort of medicines can be absolutely a block to healing, can be really damaging. So this guy comes over, he's helping us out. We have a sunglasses talk. Because he's wearing his sunglasses. And everybody here on the property is like, oh my God, he's wearing his sunglasses. Who's going to tell him? Who's going to tell him about the sunglasses? Who's going to tell him the sunglasses are blocking his hormones and metabolism? And this is why he's a night owl. And this is why he sleeps till 10. Who's going to tell him? I can't take it anymore. He walks in the kitchen for breakfast, sunglasses on, 8 a.m. I'm like, bro, we got to have this chat about sunglasses. He's like, man, that makes so much sense, that you put the sunglasses on and it blocks the light and this and that. But my Ayurvedic practitioner told me I was kapha. I don't know what they told him. He's one of them. I don't know which one. Told him I was this or that. And, so I got to wear sunglasses. Absolute horseshit. Do you see these people in power are giving such horrific advice to people? It's damaging. That's damaging. And this person has an obvious hormone imbalance. Like we know it, we talk about it, he shares it. It's like, are not wearing the sunglasses going to completely rectify and cure the hormone imbalance? Probably not. But is it going to start helping to rectify the situation? Yes, it is. That's a block to healing. Sunglasses are a block to healing. So why I'm saying this is because the advice that both allopathic and many alternative health practitioners give is often damaging. But just because this advice comes from an alternative health practitioner, then we think, hey, that's a good idea. And I'm here to say, from my own personal experience of working with so many alternative practitioners, that a lot of the things they suggest are actually a bad idea. Call me, arrogant or egotistical or whatnot, but what I observe, what I've experienced firsthand, the shit I see on Instagram, it's like we really have to be cautious about the things we share with people, especially when we're in quote unquote a power position, because people will take that on. They think better. But this is one of my whole impetus for this podcast, for the blog, etc., is to help you become empowered. So when you read something or a health practitioner gives you some advice, you're like, your shit detector is like on point. You're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Or you're like, wait a minute, wear sunglasses, because I'm too pitta. I'm sorry, that person should be out of practice. All right, that was a side note. Back to mercury. So mercury ear infections. This remedy is needed when the ear infection is accompanied with bad breath. Maybe the perspiration's offensive, the child's weak, they're weak after stool, they have a lot of spit or drool, especially on their pillow when they wake up. And the child is also worse at night, so the ear infection can get worse at night. And there are also night sweats. Kid wakes up, the bed is drenched. His or her clothes are drenched. There's perspiration over the entire body. They can't get hot. Too hot? No. Too cold? No. They need it just right. That's a mercury ear infection. The last remedy I'm going to talk about today is silica, and silica is called upon for cases of otitis that are chronic and serious. So, for example, the ear infection is stubborn and comes often or stays for a long time. It doesn't leave. Every couple of weeks or month, they get an ear infection, or the ear infection just stays. It's like still there, still there, still there. And this type of otitis, there can be loss of hearing, excuse me, in the affected ear during the ear infection. Now, with this remedy, the child's very cold, wants to be covered, even wants the ear covered. They want the affected ear covered. They might put their hand over it. They might put a pillow over it. They might put their blanket over it. Okay? Now, they do this because they like the warmth. So they want to be warm. They're aggravated by sound, so that any noise or loud noise bothers them, hurts their ear, it makes it worse. They don't want any noises going into the ear, and they don't want any air going into the ear. A draft, wind, no, they don't want that. All of this makes this whole situation worse. So in this remedy, there can also be discharge from the ear. It can suppurate, discharge, and it can have a foul smell. At this point, you're like, oh my God, I should take him in. Of course, consider all your choices, but usually you can give a dose of silica 200C, and this starts to rectify the condition pretty rapidly. Typically, children who need this remedy for otitis, they're deficient. They have a weaker constitution, they're often underweight, and they can get sick frequently. So, let me see if there's anything else I want to share with you here. Like I said, there are other remedies to consider for treating otitis, but these are the main remedies that are commonly needed in such cases that I particularly see in my practice. These are, the remedies I find that are most needed in this situation. I'm going to leave you with a few insights. One, before I go there, if you give your child too many doses of the remedy, the child could get an aggravation of symptoms. So the picture could get worse, and then you're like, oh my God, he's getting worse. He's not getting better anymore. If that happens, don't give any more doses. We want to give the minimum amount of doses necessary to bring the quote unquote cure. So sometimes that's 1 dose, sometimes that's 2 doses, sometimes that's 3 doses. So don't just keep giving doses. This is, not naturopathy. This is not allopathy. We don't just keep giving doses. If the child is better, wait. If the child is better, and then in a few hours is worse again, repeat the remedy. If the child's better, do not repeat the remedy. If the child is more than 50% better, do not repeat the remedy. If the child is less than 50% better, but they're better, they're somewhere in that, up to 50% better range, repeat the remedy. Okay. Few insights. 1, remember that getting acutes is a natural part of life. It's literally the best detox protocol any child or adult can experience. It strengthens the immune system. It's a key player when it comes to chronic disease prevention. It strengthens the vital force. It helps with growth and maturation of our children. This is why we want to avoid the use of suppressives as much as we can, because it'll do the exact opposite. It can actually stunt growth. It will suppress the immune system. It will weaken the constitution. I'm not telling you not to use suppressives. Telling you to there's other options, there's other choices, there's other considerations to call upon before going that route. If your child has an ear infection, and you try 2 remedies with no relief, 3 remedies, no relief, the least invasive, least suppressive over the counter is children's or adult ibuprofen. Adult for adults, of course, children for children. Ibuprofen. Give the smallest dose necessary to remove the pain. Okay. Lastly, you don't want to repeat a 200C remedy too often. You shouldn't need to repeat a 200C for otitis media more than 3 times. And you may only need to give 1 to 2 doses, likely, if the remedy is correct. If the remedy acts, however, the symptoms return, then, if you're, oh man, I've given this 3 times and it gets better, but then it returns, this is a sign that the immune system isn't strong enough to hold the remedy, and you may need to go higher in potency. You may need a 1M in these sort of situations. Now, that's some basics. There's a lot to know with regard to homeopathy. There's a lot to consider. There's a lot to understand, but hopefully this gives you a really nice solid foundation when you go about treating ear infections or helping your children through ear infections. Of course, I go over all of this in my foundations course, the in-person foundations intensive this October 6th through 8th. I will be going through this and other acutes. It's going to be hosted at my farm here in northern New Mexico. You can learn more about that over at my site, heatharshepard.com. Go to the homeopathy tab and you'll see the foundations intensive. It's not too late to sign up. You can still join. I'd love to have you here. And I also have an online version of that course. So, and lastly, I think you all know I have a 1.5-year long practitioner training course that teaches you how to be a classically trained homeopath and how to utilize this medicine to help people overcome both acute and chronic conditions. So, those are some options if you listen to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to learn more. This was interesting. This seems helpful. This seems it makes sense. Yeah, let's have a chat. Go over to my site, check out the trainings and courses, because there's a lot coming up. The in-person, the foundations online, and my next practitioner training starts this January. So I hope you found this episode helpful for treating ear infections with homeopathy and understanding the importance of acutes, of high fever, and so forth. See you next week.